Hi, everyone. We're going to speak about the three-phased Aurora Bridge Swales in Seattle's Fremont neighborhood and newest swale at Northlake Commons, which is a regional swale at the base of Wallingford. The Aurora Swales were finished building in 2020, and they cleaned 2 million gallons of water from the Aurora Bridge overhead. The Northlake Commons Swale is just about a year old, and it cleans about 2.6 million gallons of water from the roadways uphill in the neighborhood above the site. These projects demonstrate the benefits of public-private partnerships and how Seattle Public Utilities has worked to create an incentive program to encourage just that. My name is Rachel Meyer. I am a landscape architect and director of sustainability at Weber Thompson. I was the landscape designer for these projects, and all of my colleagues introduce themselves and share their roles.
Hi, I'm Mark Ray. I am part of the development group that built several of these projects. I know that the D word is a bad word. It's not devil, it's not divorce. I'm a developer. But we've done a lot of good projects that we're excited to highlight that we've done with our engineer team and our city constituents.
Good morning, everyone. Kevin Burrell. I'm the Environmental Policy Manager for Seattle Public Utilities Drainage and Wastewater line of business. We provide drinking water for about 1.5 million people in the Seattle area. We collect recyclables and yard waste, and we also do drainage and wastewater services, and I'll pass it to Pooja.
Thank you so much. I'm Pooja Kashyap. I am a civil engineer and principal with KPFF Consulting Engineers. I was the civil engineer of record for Northlake Commons and the regional swale that we built there.
Awesome, thanks. So, big picture, these projects are the result of private development helping to clean basically the gauntlet of pollution that salmon in Seattle pass through when they swim through the Lake Washington Ship Canal. So we'll start with Mark. Mark, what led you to form the nonprofit Clean Lake Union, and what did receiving the first incentive check from this SPU program, what did that mean to you?
Let's see here. I don't think the slide made it on here, but if I could just describe. So we manage a marina on Lake Union, and when we started working on that marina, right when we got involved, we saw a huge oil slick on the lake, and the marina management plan that we had put in place was, we need to have spill kits and take care of that because a boat is leaking engine oil or fuel or whatnot. And we ran down there and saw all that oil, and we came to learn that it wasn't from a boat. It was from stormwater. And such a simple solution. I mean, again, I'm born and raised in Seattle. We always thought there was more filtration and whatnot. And really, it was just water directly coming off Northlake Way, and then going straight into Lake Union. And literally, if I can paint the picture, the salmon, the tribe have their nets in September right off of where this oil slick was. And we started talking about what could we do about it. And we built one of our first projects focused on this. We started working on it in 2015, and everyone sitting up here with me was involved in that project. And we really just started asking, what could we do? And one of the things we thought we were a combined sewer overflow system. So this property sits, you're seeing it on the screen, right next to the Aurora Bridge. And that stormwater comes right off the Aurora Bridge, hits the right-of-way. It's a state freeway, by the way. State freeway into city right-of-way, and then directly into Lake Union with no filtration whatsoever. And when we thought it was going to be combined sewer overflow, KPFF, and the previous presenter was talking about collaboration early on. This is exactly that. We were collaborating early on of what we could do. And KPFF was working on a water tower in Walla Walla, I think it was, a project they were going to demo that water tower. We were going to take the water tower, cut off the legs, and hold the stormwater in that tank, and on it, paint it bright pink as only you can do in Fremont. And then right on it, shit happens, ... but not in Fremont. and then have a digital counter of how much waste we prevented from going in the lake. We come to find out that we were not a CSO system, we were just stormwater. And so we pivoted early on in the design process and built these bioswales in city right-of-way. And that was really one of the big challenges. But that's where it got started, is that one oil slick on the lake. And then fortunately, I mean, we've been working together for over a decade now. And just what can we do? How can we implement stuff like this? And that's how it started. And I'm proud to say that we're still working on projects today, and we're going to go over some of those today.
Awesome. Yeah. You see this graph here. The water that was coming off of the Aurora Bridge turned out to be 6 times more polluted than the national average. It was the dirtiest water that researchers had ever seen. We still don't exactly know why, but it has shown to be very effective. And these swales have been very effective in cleaning that water. Mark, what challenges as a developer do you wish municipalities kind of understood better?
Yeah, I think not knowing the landscape of how we attacked this, it was really asking the questions why. And I mentioned earlier, this was state freeway, city right of way, private developer building a project next to it, and we said, hey, we want to improve this asphalt area that was vandalized. Bad things were happening. It's underneath the Aurora Bridge. It was graffiti and not a good spot. How can we do this? And there was a lot of different jurisdictions we needed to touch because it's state, city, and then you're dumping water into the lake. And what initially came back was, you can't take state water and put it in city right away and have the project built by a private developer and then discharge the water you've cleaned via a private developer back into the city property that goes into Fish and Wild. And I was like, we're just trying to do good here. And really at the end of the day, it's having good partners that just kept asking questions. KPFF, Kevin with SPU, such a strong ally in saying, let's talk about this and let's figure out how to do it. And it did take a lot of legal time to get everyone to agree to it, but that one project, we ended up building all the infrastructure and then donating it back to the city. And then we have an easement with the city to go back and make some of those, maintain the landscaping. And if it gets vandalized or anything like that, we take care of the aesthetics. SPU takes care of the actual gear and equipment. And we've actually done different renditions of that as we've worked together. But I think the best thing was just an open mind and then having someone help navigate all the different people you needed to touch to do something that's shouldn't be complicated, but it is pretty complicated because of all the different jurisdictions.
Yeah. So Kevin, you've been working on creating these incentive programs to encourage public-private partnerships to build green stormwater infrastructure. So can you describe the incentive and what aspect you're most proud of?
Sure. But maybe for some local context before we begin, many local jurisdictions in the room, and I hope we impart with you some enthusiasm and ideas for innovation in your stormwater toolbox and your development codes. You should have the authority to make adjustments so that you can support these odd and unusual ducks named Mark and his counterparts to help us go beyond what we can do for ourselves. Seattle is about 85 square miles. And you might imagine we don't have the funds or space to solve such a ubiquitous problem like stormwater pollution on our own accord. And so we are using public-private partnerships and incentive funds to promote more partnerships like we've come to share with you today. So 2 programs that I'll highlight, which are these are not new phenomena. Other combined sewer communities, particularly on the East Coast, like Philadelphia, New York City, Prince George's, Maryland, they've been out of the gate early, spending hundreds of millions on trying to get community involved in developing resilient green infrastructure as a way of capturing the volume of rainwater that gets into their combined sewer systems under federal orders. We're not there yet. And Seattle is getting closer to managing 90% of its combined sewer water through a big tunnel project that is almost done. But two projects that we wanted to highlight. The first being a developer incentive, which we've used to work with Mark on, where we're paying for projects to go above and beyond their stormwater code and providing the incentive through either dollars per gallon gallon managed or area or acres managed as part of the incentive. Folks who come in through the building department or want to talk to the utility directly are welcome to do so. There's even a checkbox now on our permitting forms when people come in that say, do you have a green project? Do you want to come talk to us about it? So that's part one. Part two, we actually have a community-based public-private partnership that's being run by a host of consulting partners and community organizations that is delivering somewhere in the order of 25 to 50 acres of new stormwater area managed through this program. And so folks who have multifamily, industrial, or commercial property of greater than 5,000 square feet of impervious can ask them to come retrofit your property and help us solve the rainwater and or volume problem, the quality and volume problem that may exist in your part of town here. So that's a quick overview.
Awesome. Kevin, what had to change in the permitting process to accommodate requests like the swale at Northlake Commons?
This has been a theme so far, but just to impart with the local jurisdictions here, you should already have that authority in your code. So we had to convince ourselves that we had it. But then the second part is, and we've heard this already today, changing hearts and minds within the institution of the many stakeholders within our city government, the planning and building department, the permitting departments of our partners at SDOT, and the legal context, the regulatory context. All of that required a lot of careful bird dogging, and we came to find out that folks, once they understood what someone like Mark's vision was, getting to the outcome was much easier. But everyone is generally used to doing things as they always have done them. So it took a little bit of inspirational coaching and working to change hearts and minds inside the city government to get to where we are.
Awesome. So Pooja, you have designed 2 regional stormwater swales, first at the University of Washington and then at Northlake Commons. Can you talk a little bit about what makes them unique and the process you had to go through?
Yeah, so I think for both of those projects, the things that made them most unique was actually the people that were involved in taking everything from the beginning stages to construction. We had every team member represented by somebody who was a passionate advocate for water quality in Seattle. And that was, the owners, the developers, the landscape architects, the architects, civil engineers, the utility, the permitting agency. Everybody there was an expert in what they did. They were passionate about not doing things the way they've always been done, but doing them better. They were persistent. And I think the biggest piece, though, was that everybody was so collaborative. And when you put all those pieces together, it's kind of a recipe for success. And I think that's what contributed to the success for both of those.
Pooja, when you are proposing ideas that don't have very many precedents, what do you do to help make this happen?
I think, so the UW project, that I'll give a little bit of context for, but I think the first step was acknowledging that process was terrifying and getting over the fact that this was going to be a lot of work and it was terrifying was a big step. Some context for all of you, my career, excuse me, I've been doing this for about 24 years. And I've been working in Seattle that whole time. And for the majority of my career, the UW has been a big client of mine. And that campus is kind of a city within a city in a lot of ways, especially when you look at the civil infrastructure. And so a lot of my career I spent seeing that infrastructure, looking at all of the outfalls that the university owns. I worked with the Stormwater Code over and over again, with the Stormwater Manual in the City of Seattle, knew that all of these things had the best intentions, the best interests for the city, but also, my engineer mind seeing the spaces, the places that we could be doing better. And so that's kind of what led me to that spot of, figuring out that we could do this in a better way. But getting there meant proposing something that hadn't been done before. So KPFF had been doing our homework for a lot of years before we worked on the regional facility with the UW. We'd looked at some outfalls that we knew we could do some treatment at those locations and make things a lot better for the downstream waters. And finally had an opportunity, a project called the UW Health Sciences Education Building. That was a progressive design build project with Miller Hull and Lise Crutcher Lewis. KPFF was interviewed as a sub-consultant to them. And during our interview, we actually mentioned this as a big idea that we could bring to this project. And the progressive design build model was super collaborative. And it was a model that really challenged everybody on the team to try and do better, and not to just challenge each individual member of the team to do better, but to encourage the whole team to support that person, that member of the team, as they tried to achieve these goals. So that made it easier. That terrifying piece was like, okay, we've got support here. I can do this because it's not just me. But the process was twofold for me on that one. The first step being I needed to propose this idea to my design build team members and say, this is why I think we should do it. And what that entailed for that project was saying, okay, we've got this building site. We could design a code-compliant on-site stormwater management system, known costs, known complexity, known construction type. Or what I'd like to do is something that costs more money, is located somewhere else in the drainage basin, has potential risks to the project schedule. And by the way, we might have to write a director's rule with SDCI and SPU so that our building is actually code compliant. But I think we should do it because it's better. And I presented that idea to the project executive committee for the health sciences building, and they agreed. And they said, this is the better thing to do, so let's do it. The next step was finding the right people at SPU to talk to. And at the time, I was on SPU's customer review panel, and Mami Hara was the director at the time. And I kind of cornered her one day at a meeting and said, hey, I want to do this thing. And can you tell me who I should talk to? So she put me in touch with the right people. And that led to a really challenging but super collaborative and really rewarding project that opened in 2022. And it was terrifying the entire time. But, I just kept keeping the team in the loop in terms of what the schedule risks were, how the progress was going, and everybody made it happen. It was pretty awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, these projects are definitely a hurdle, and they're near and dear to all our hearts. So we've put in a lot of sweat equity in this process. So Kevin, can you tell us how many projects can SPU fund and for how long?
Well, I don't think my boss is here yet today, but it's safe to say, he's speaking later, but it's safe to say public-private partnerships and incentives are clearly one of the main tools in our toolbox that we plan to use for the decades to come to get more public benefit out of every dollar that we spend, and also create more resilience for the funding that we're putting into our systems. So that's part one. Part two, practically speaking, Northlake Commons is an example where the utility could support a couple of these a year easily, which is probably managing in the order of 5 million, 7 million gallons a year. So for project designers and engineers, they might think of a handful of blocks that a project site might collect rainwater for. And for the community-based public-private partnership, the Rain City Partnership Program, they're looking for, I think, anywhere in the order of 25 acres right now, and we're hoping to scale that program up. So this is future forward-facing. It's nowhere in comparison to, like I said, Philadelphia or New York, or Prince George's County in Maryland, because they're doing it under the auspices of their consent decree for combined sewer overflow volume control. We're doing it because it is the right thing to do. These are fishable, swimmable waters, and we are trying to solve our local flooding and water quality problems by integrating these solutions with development and private parcel retrofits.
Awesome. Mark, another question to you is, so Clean Lake Union has a number of goals and are looking at the 6 bridges that cross the ship canal. Can you speak to kind of the hope for how many of these projects you're hoping to pursue and the challenges, and maybe a little bit about the pollution that was discovered by Jen McIntyre's team at WSU and the impact on the fish and what we're trying to solve for?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll touch first on Jen McIntyre. So Jen McIntyre is a professor at Wazoo. I don't know if you guys have heard about her work, but early on when we were doing this first project, starting looking at it in 2015, KPFF sent over a video when we started talking about stormwater, and it was her work related to the 520 bridge. And they had just taken stormwater off the 520 bridge, stuck some juvenile salmon in that water, and they died within a minute or so. And you start thinking about that, like, that's what our salmon are swimming through. That's right where they migrate. And that was really, combine that with the aha moment of that oil slick, those two things that said, what can we start doing? And so when we formed Clean Lake Union, really to try and do additional work besides some of the development work. And I think what excited us about doing the Aurora Bridge, and I should add, you're seeing some of the photos on the screen of the phases, but we started with just one downspout off the Aurora Bridge, and that's just north of 200,000 gallons of water. And then we ended up building another project across the street, the watershed building, and we did 2 downspouts, and we did alley stormwater. And then we did a third phase where we, just south of that, where we had to get owners association to agree to contribute the land and convert it from grass into a bioswale. And so basically we're treating the entire north half of the Aurora Bridge and those downspouts with that water. But what excited us about it is there's bridges all over the world. I mean, this is really common sense stuff, but a lot of that water, if it's going straight into the lake or whatever body of water it is, this is a replicable thing. And we've actually seen some other developers do some of these things. And I think that's the biggest form of flattery we could have, is how can we make other people want to do this? And those first 3 phases, there was no money from SPU in those phases, but there was support in terms of like, hey, we're going to help you get through this. We're going to work together to rewrite the code, as Kevin mentioned, and make sure that happened. On the 3rd phase, we did work with the Nature Conservancy in the state of Washington, and their budget carved out $500,000 to do that 3rd phase. And then this last phase, we were talking about the Northlake Commons one, I call it our Aaron Brockovich moment, because SPU gave us a check. Am I allowed to say the amount? Okay. It was north of $500,000. It did not pay for the work that and the cost to us to do that phase. But what a great moment that the city is giving a check to a private developer to do the work. And in that particular phase, it's the opposite of the early phases. We are taking the water, 2.6 acres of stormwater that would go straight in by Dunlumber, if you know where that is, on the north end of Lake Union. That water would go straight into the lake. And so we actually, just last month, we turned it on because we wanted the plants to mature. But we turned on and shut off the water from going straight in the lake and brought it onto private property and cleaned. So the previous projects were on city right away. So we built this bioswale on private property, where there's a whole bunch of complexity to say, okay, now SPU, we're going to build it and give it back to you. So the easement's the opposite. Like, it's our land, our property, but we're going to build the gear and give it back to you to maintain. And we just turned that on a week or so, or a month or so ago, and you're looking at the photo right there. It's like a lazy river, but super exciting. And again, I think to answer your question, Rachel, the biggest thing we could do is if other people want to do it, we can get other people excited about it. As Kevin said, they don't have the funds to treat all 85 acres of Seattle, and no city does. Portland doesn't, Everett doesn't, but if we can collaborate and get other people excited about it with some form of partnership, it doesn't always have to be money, but it's better aesthetically too. If you go down to Fremont and see these things, they're beautiful. And whereas before it was just asphalt. So there's a lot of positives to do it. As you can tell, we're the 3 of us or 4 of us are all passionate about it, and we want to see more people do it. So
We have 4 minutes. Are there any questions? I know people haven't asked questions yet, but otherwise I have a ton. We can talk about this all day. So Pooja, if you could eliminate a hurdle to these kinds of projects, except for maybe a therapist to support the team in fear, what would you ask for?
Some of the hurdles have actually started to clear as a result of some of the work we've been doing. One of them is just part of the fear that we had as a design build team was we were designing a facility that was very separate from our building, but we needed to complete that in order to obtain occupancy for our building because it was part of meeting our code requirements. So the entire time that we were designing that, we also had a parallel design for our building that was a standard code compliant building. And we had, at every check-in, we had to make that decision. Are we going to go this way or are we going to go this way? And that was a huge hurdle for our team, to have to maintain 2 designs for the whole thing in order to get to the outcome that we wanted. That is changing. Codes evolved and that's becoming, easier to do. But another piece is there's this imaginary line between public runoff and private runoff. And it would be great if we could just get rid of that imaginary line, because you can't treat everything separately and be as efficient as you could if you just, it's gonna combine. Yeah, eventually. Let's do it at the right spot.
Okay, we have one question. Talk loud.
How are you measuring the impact of the volume? That, and then how do you forecast that with your done?
So just to make sure everyone heard, how are we measuring the impact and how do we look forward to future projects?
Water quality.
I can take a brief stab at that. I mean, I think one of the ones that I love about this is the photo that keeps showing up there is the before and after water. I was there when we did the test, and everyone in this room is super smart, but I could go to a kindergarten class or a first grade class and show them which one would you want to drink. And you get it. Some of it's just visual, like we know we're taking the toxins out of it, and then we are doing a lot of testing. I'd actually like to do more testing. Each sample we test is $250. And if we sample the water before it goes into the bioswale, that's one sample. And then if it goes through one cell, that's another sample. And if it gets down to the second cell, well, how much cleaner is that water when it gets to the second cell and to the third cell? And then I would then argue, hey, if we catch the first flush in that first rain, which we did this year, right, coming out of August, that water's going to be a little bit dirtier than, say, Sunday afternoon after it poured down rain all weekend. Is that water going to be cleaner? And we actually need more funding to do more testing of some of those results, and that's something we're looking forward to doing. But we know the water is better as it goes through those bioswales. And I think what's really cool too, and I should just mention this, is just the amount of maintenance we've had to do on those bioswales is very little. I mean, occasionally we need to change a plant, but it's, where that owners association I was talking about before, we had a landscape contract. We needed to mow that lawn, every 2 weeks or so. We're not having to do that anymore. So it actually saved us money. That owners association saved them money by doing that. So we need to get better testing and results, and we're focused on that. But we know the results we've gotten, and some of the graphs are up there. It's much better.
All right, that's our time. We'd be happy to talk more out in the lobby. Thanks, Ken.